All right, guys, we're here at Brickworld Indy 2017, and the Beyond the Brick guys have been awesome enough to show up, and they're going to give us a videotape of the great ball contraption, narrated by the one and only Mr. Tom Atkinson. Enjoy.
Here we go. Thank you, Brian, for that. Tom, everyone. So we'll move our way through the line here.
Well, it's good to be here, and we got another great ball contraption to talk about. This time I think we have, when I counted, we had 83 modules, which is pretty good. Yeah. That's a pretty good number, healthy number. So we're going to start right here and work our way all the way around the table and see what kind of interesting things we can see. So right off the bat, we're starting, this yellow module is one of the oldest modules in existence. This is one of Steve Hassenplug's original modules from 2004. So, and then we move into a small batch of one of the Brickworld workshop modules, a small stack of 5 of them, and you know, I counted this as one module this time. It's not 5 separate ones. So, and then so the balls come in and they go around and through the 5 different sections, and then go on to the next module, which is a little black one, which you've definitely seen before. From there, we go into Steve Hassenplug's Robot Factory, which uses Akiyuki's picker design, and this is, you know, one of the hits with the kids because of all the minifigs, and the mechanical motion is pretty interesting too. So this can handle a lot of balls. Whatever balls you give it, just go right through. This thing can move a lot of balls. So from there we go on to the next module, which is Brickworld Workshop module from this past year, 2016. These modules have turned out to be a little more difficult running than initially thought, but we managed to keep a couple of them working through the day, this being one of them. From there we move on to a simple conveyor that brings up the balls nice and slow, but in 2 rows, so it keeps up with the 1 ball per second rate. After that, we go on to a stepper, which feeds the balls up onto the great bridge contraption, which is still a viable module, although it hasn't had a train go over it in several years. But it's still a way to get in and out, and a way to get balls across an opening. So we use it for that. After it comes off of that, it rolls into my pneumatic module, which had a tune-up recently, so is working just fine. In the past, I've had issues with pneumatic pistons failing, and eventually the compressors wear out. I think I'm on my 4th one since this module was created. So if anybody wants to send me free compressors, I'll use them.
You can hook Tom up there. So let's see if you can hear. So this makes like an interesting noise. There's the mic next to it. See if that picked that noise up there, because this is always one of my favorite modules to see because of the rapid movement and the noise it makes.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a unique module for here anyway. I think some other people have done pneumatic modules, but that one is definitely a little different. Then we go on to my spiral, which has been around for a number of years and is always entertaining. I'm now starting to get people copying it, which is good. It's a good thing. And actually, we'll get to one later. But and then we go on to a tipper, which is a nice slow tipper. It handles balls in a batch and moves them on. They roll in and roll out nice and slow in little batches. And we go into the Ferris wheel, which we've seen before, and it's a big module, but it's a crowd pleaser as well.
When you move this module here, what's it like setting this one up?
Well, it actually comes, the wheel comes off, and thanks to Todd Webb of Brick Fair, he built me a wood box to transport the wheel in. So that's making it a lot easier, although it makes it hard to get it in a car. But the rest of it, once the wheel comes out, these 4 main black pillars, they all come off. They're all held in with pins, and then they come off and go in the bottom of a container, and the rest of the base goes on top of it. And it really makes it relatively compact. Everything lays flat. So as you can imagine, trying to move it like it is would be a challenge. So. After that, I go into one of my favorite modules to put next to the Ferris wheel because it's long and skinny and not that interesting. So this is my pusher. moves small batches of balls by pushing them up a ramp into the next module. And once they get up to the top, they roll down into the counter. This counter has been around for a number of years, based on NXTs, and each digit has its own motor. So it's more of an electronic counter rather than a mechanical counter. The thing I'm most proud of with this is actually the brick-built numbers. and you'll notice that it's built with black and gray as opposed to white, which would be a better contrast. At the time that I built this, I didn't have enough white plate because it was all wrapped up in other things. So I've never went back and fixed it. I always intended to replace it with white, but it's fine.
It works. It looks like we just passed 2,000 there.
Well, I hate to admit this, but that's got to be wrong. We should probably be at about, I don't know, I would guess about 8,000 now. So that clearly shows that I...
Like 11 on the other guy.
All right, so probably what's happened is I still have that bug where the most significant digit doesn't flip. So that's probably add a 1 to the front of it. And once we shut the camera off, I may manually do that. So from there we go into this square bricked module, a square geared module. And this module's been around for a while. I've made some improvements to it so it's a little more stable. This was definitely one that was hacked together years ago and has been slowly improved over time. It's fairly reliable now. It doesn't break or fall apart. It does toss a ball occasionally, but again, every time I get a chance, I make little incremental improvements, and end up with modules that are pretty reliable. I don't think this has had to been touched all weekend so far. From there, we go to this white module, which is a very small sweeper. It moves the balls up, a couple of studs at a time. This module is, again, one that's been for a few years and has just recently had a couple of updates to it to make it a little more reliable. And then from there, we move to my perpetual prototype, which I swear it was the next thing to work on before I ran out of time, before coming here. I'm going to rebuild it. The next time I see you guys, there will be a replacement for this.
It won't be the same prototype.
No, it'll be like 1 or 2 colors instead of all of them. I promise. From there, we move into a small stepper that's really a bunch of slow-moving slopes. So a fair number of balls can get in there and move at a slow rate through the 2 steps to move on to the next thing. The next thing would be this rising platform, and it's kind of a simple wave where you just have a platform that's going straight up and down with a ramp leading into it and a ramp coming out of it. So the interesting thing about this is when I first built this, everything was tight enough that it was built flat and it worked. And over time, things loosened up. Every single pin, every single hole got loosened. And I had to raise it and raise it and raise it. And I just had to rebuild it and readjust everything again. So it's now working pretty well. In the last couple of events, I've had to prop up the back a little to keep the flow. So now I actually rebuilt it to the point, and you couldn't tell by looking at it that it's been rebuilt, but it's sitting at a higher angle. From there, we dump into the bulldozer. And I know we've talked about the bulldozer, and we can skip right around all this if you want to. But this is the Bill Bourne Memorial Bulldozer. This was Bill Bourne's pride and joy, which I rebuilt to memorialize him and his work with this. And as far as I know, this is the one and only great ball contraption that is actually publicly interactive. So we've had all age kids from 3 to 60 driving the little bulldozer around.
I think it's really commendable. I think it's really great that you guys involve the public like that, because it's nice to get people involved, and that way they can do some stuff rather than just looking at everything at the show.
Yes, and the thing is that this is actually a bit of a challenge to drive this, and I've seen been doing this a while now and observed some patterns. So kids that have never driven anything ever pick it up pretty quickly. But kids that have driven something with a steering wheel, they have to rethink. Adults that have never driven a bulldozer or a tank or anything, take them a minute to figure out how to make this thing work.
Turn around.
So-
Turn around. Now go forward.
So the bulldozer pushes the balls into the corner, which that ball pump brings them up and out and onto the next module, which is my black hole. And this black hole is a good one to put right after the bulldozer because it can take them in big batches and re-put them out at 1 per second. So when we get a little kid driving that can't get any balls in the corner, this can keep putting balls out. And when we get somebody like James who thinks he knows what he's doing over there driving this thing.
Oh, I don't. I'm just a rookie. I'm honestly just a rookie. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Look at that. Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking.
Very good. It looks like, did we lose one here? Thank you. We lost one. There we go.
Oh,
Yeah, see, he loses points for losing one. So once it comes out of the black hole, it goes on to a simple module that this story's been told before by. So a guy sat down at one of the events and built this in about 3 hours, and it's been running ever since. I use it now pretty much as like a filler module or a replacement module, and it just plain works as I'm knocking things on the floor. So after that, we move on to this is Mr. Red's Wave, which has gone through many iterations, and he's finally gotten it so that this thing is working pretty darn good. I don't think this has had a problem. Once we got it set up and tweaked in the very beginning, I think it's been working great all day. He struggled with this for a long time to get it this working this well. So it's doing a good job. From there, we move into another one of the older Brickworld workshop modules, which then dumps the balls into my shooter. Now my shooter, and people give me a hard time about this thing all the time. I actually, the thing that has been the issue of late has not been fixed yet. But what I did spend some time doing was making the whole base of this thing a whole lot sturdier, and that actually has improved the issue that it had. So I think that this is, again, taken an incremental improvement. Still room for more.
There's always room for improvement with this. And I love how you've done it. So that's just like the small base plates you kind of like put in angles to make the hopper there?
Yeah, the hopper was kind of, it arrived at its current form kind of organically. Okay, so the balls are shooting too hard, so make it a little taller, a little wider, put this in. And it's really, it was designed to be lightweight because it's way out at this arm. So it's a bunch of base plates and a rubber band holding the whole thing together. So
obviously it's going to be foolproof.
Obviously. But strangely enough, this is the thing I've probably had the least amount of problems with. All the problems are down here. So, see? The part that I haven't fixed yet. Yeah. So from there we move on to a nicely decorated and color coordinated ramp. The color scheme of this is pretty cool, and this has been dead nuts reliable. And from there we go on to a pretty pink module. This belongs to Josh, and he's done a marvelous job with colorizing his modules. Actually, all of these are his, or these three are. And as you can see, that he's very much into color. And also, you can get a shot of those pants.
Those are some amazing pants as well.
He's into his color. He definitely. So this tilt back and forth is a neat scheme for getting the balls to work their way up. It's entertaining to watch, and it works pretty well. I don't think there's been any issues with this. From there, we move on to a module that has a tipping ramp that the balls can come in and roll out either way, and the ramp will tip up and then dump them into its output ramp. From there, we go into Nikki's mechanical counter, and this thing is really awesome. And when we first started off, we had to get him to come over to reset it to 0 because we didn't dare. So He came over and showed us what we needed to do to make it all back to zero. But this thing has been working great, and I believe the count on this better than I believe the count on my electronic one over there. So this number is going to be accurate. So from here, we go around the corner, and this is kind of interesting. This is the first time I think this module has been used as a corner. It usually has an exit ramp that brings it back in line so that it acts like a normal module, but that part gets attached, and we said, hey, look, we can use this as a corner, just not put that ramp on. So we're trying that. It's been working great. This now then goes into another Brickworld workshop module with antenna.
So real quick, you mentioned the Brickworld workshops a couple times. For people who aren't familiar with that and are maybe going to Brickworld in the future, how can people get involved with that, and how do those work?
Well, this is at Brickworld Chicago, which happens in the middle of June. For the past 3 years, and including this year coming up, we'll make it the 4th. There's been a workshop where you buy a kit and build it, and then your module that got created gets to be a part of the Great Ball Contraption layout. And the great thing about it is it gets people over the hump of being scared of GBC, because it is a little intimidating to look at this and go, I can't build one of those. But after building a kit and seeing that, oh, okay, so it just has to get the ball from here to there, it builds people's confidence up. Doesn't mean that everybody that goes through that process is going to turn into a GBC builder, but it has converted some people who are scared to death of the concept into builders. So I think it's a good thing. I know this year, due to the popularity, the kits have sold out practically instantly in prior years. So this year there's actually going to be 2 workshops, and each workshop has a little more kits than we've had in prior years to try to keep up with the demand. So theoretically, we can end up with 100 new modules at Brickworld Chicago this year. We'll see. From there, we have a simple stepper, which is very pretty. It's I think this is also Josh's. You could just tell colorful, so it's probably his. And then we go into John Brost's box module, and the concept of this he stole from Steve, which is you design a frame that fits in a box and then build a module inside. Makes it very easy to set up and tear down. And this has a couple of different paths that the ball can go down. It's a neat idea. I really like it, and that it does make it simple to set up and tear down. So, all right. From there, we go on to a conveyor, which is highly decorated. The actual motion of this is a relatively simple conveyor, but the decorations are awesome. So I'm always looking for more of those. And so goes up and comes on down to another module that is a flipper. It's basically flips the balls up. Put a couple balls in there so you can see. And then they go on to the next module, which is another conveyor, which is prettily decorated. And that brings the balls up, and it goes on to a different module, which has a different flipper mechanism to it. It's also got some decorations, minifig controls and stuff. And then from there we go on to a scooper, which is basically scooping the balls up and in small batches and pushing them on to the next one, which is my module that everybody's going to give me a hard time about it when we get done with the video, because it's not working well. This module has its ups and downs, and some days it works great all day, and some days it acts like Steve. I mean, some days it just likes to jam, and I don't know what's going on with it now, but it's probably one of those things that just needs some Tom attention. You know how that is, right?
Yep, everything's better with some Tom attention.
Right, because when I stop giving it attention, it starts breaking. So
Very, very needy.
yeah, right. I have my modules are needy. I think everybody will agree with that. From there, we go on to a module which is this year's Brickworld build. This is an early prototype, So let's move on quickly.
I don't want to give too much away.
No. From there, we go into a series of modules that are built by John Bros. This one is a flipper, and I like the use of the counterweights to make the load on the motor a lot easier. He also uses a chain to keep them synchronized, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. It hasn't really been an issue, so that's a good thing. Once it leaves there, we go into a stepper module, and this is a dual stepper. This is gives the balls 2 paths up, so it can move nice and slow and methodical, and bring the balls up in 2 paths and dump it into the next module, which is a pretty new module. This is based on a new Technic set that Lego came out with about 6 months ago. It is the largest Technic set ever, and of all us GBC builders, as soon as we saw this set, I was like, okay, that's a module. What do we got to do to make it a module? And it turns out you have to do quite a lot to get it. It's not out of the box a GBC module. The motors had to be added. Some of the complicated gearing had to be taken out because there was just so much friction and so much losses in that the motors had to be more directly tied to the things they were turning. This is still relatively new. We actually fixed a couple of issues today with it. It still needs a little work, but it's been working pretty well. It leaks balls, but it's not bad. Good. And it's interesting. People recognize this, so it's something they can associate with a little bit. From there, we go into John's Archimedes screw with the screw on the inside, and the balls go in it, and then they go up the inside of the tube on the corrugated tubing, and then they roll out the top and come on to the next module, which is kind of a cross between a stepper and a pusher. It's kind of a pusher at an angle, and I really like this module. This was new a year or so ago, and seems to be working pretty well at this point. I know early it had a few issues, but for the most part, this has been working well. So, from the other side, from the outside of this, we go into the conveyor that goes over our entranceway. So this allows us to be lazy old men and not crawl under tables, and it's always open, unlike my train bridge, which you got to push the button and wait until Bluetooth behaves. This you can walk in and out of all day long.
Obviously, you don't have to duck under tables and whatever. It's much easier if you can just walk around it.
Yeah, I'm too old to crawl under tables, especially given the amount of time I'd have to go in and out and in and out and in and out.
Oh, did you?
So we will like hesitate for a second here because we have way too many cooks cooking the module ahead of us. But let's move on. We'll just run them over.
It's one of John's. It works all the time.
Yes, this module has been very reliable until somebody broke something. Is it working right now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's working now. Oh, you're right. That has to be reset. Well, somebody can do that after we go on. This module works, and believe me, it works fine.
It really is a wonderful module.
Yeah, you know who I blame? Steve.
No surprise there. That's usually who the blame comes down to.
Yeah, and he's really good at ducking from the camera. It's like you need 2 cameras, one to go each way to get them. So once the balls flip up through this module, now there's something wrong with that. Something's out of whack. We'll move along. Then it goes into another John Bros module, and this is another one that's run by an NXT. I failed to mention that an NXT ran that last one, and that's why Steve thinks he knows what he's doing there. So this is run by an NXT, and it's basically an elevator that stops at the top and the bottom and allows the balls to roll in at the bottom and drops them out at the top. This module The only issue I'm aware of with it is the fact that the balls slowly collect underneath, and then if you try to get them out while it's running, you can make the module disintegrate. I know that firsthand knowledge. So from there, we go into a module that is a series of the lift arms twisting around and pushing it up a ramp. This is kind of a different motion than most any modules. I mean, this kind of rotating lift arm has been used, but it's usually in the other orientation. So this is a really neat thing. From there, we move on to a Brickworld workshop module from last year, and this one's definitely decorated differently than what the default was. And we go into another one that is, again, decorated differently than the default. These modules have had some issues. The initial alignment is very critical, and if they get bumped or jarred or anything during operation, they get out of whack, and you kind of have to pull them off and straighten them all up again and try again. So from there, we go into a Brickworld workshop module from a prior year, and that dumps into this very interesting motion module that is basically run by one small motor and has a bunch of gears running around all over the place. The motion is definitely interesting. I like to see this kind of stuff where there's a motion that's different. I mean, it's one thing to see conveyor. Good to see different stuff. So, and then we should probably quickly skip past this whole series of future Brickworld modules that don't exist yet, so you didn't see them. And then we go into my shooter, which I am happy to say has just had a major tune-up. Doesn't look any different, but there's been a lot of moving parts that were replaced because they were worn. Springs were replaced, gears were replaced, and it seems to be working pretty well. It was starting to get a little odd in the last couple of shows, so it's something you have to do every once in a while, is just go through stuff and replace worn-out parts. So from there, we go around the corner, and we get into, come down the zigzag into Brian's conveyor, which is mostly horizontal, and at the end it brings the balls up so it can drop them down a tiny little ramp into the next module, which is Brad Sweet's roller coaster. And the balls come up a long conveyor, and then they have two different paths to go down. One is goes around and around, and the other is a loop-to-loop. And then I'm sure the balls have fun going through the loop-to-loop. I know I would, at least once. So after that, we go into, and all of this is part of the module. They all come back, the two paths combine again. And then we go into two of the Brickworld workshop modules from 2 years ago that have had extended output ramps. And then these feed into the Brad Sweet's ski lift module. And this module is awesome because it's actually mimicking something in the real world, and it's finicky. I've seen that getting it to work, it takes a little bit of tweaking, but once it's set up and running, it's working pretty well. It picks up the balls fairly reliably and drops them off at the top of the ski slope. And obviously there's some people who don't know how to get on a ski lift, and these balls represent that.
They end up at the tiled bottom there.
So once it gets to the top, they get dumped off and they go down this ski ramp, which is always fun, right? Who doesn't mind going down a ski ramp? From there, we go into Brad's Bumblebee wheel module, and he's got the B to go with it, just because it matches. And then from there, we go into a conveyor that feeds into a new partial module that Brian made. The intent was for a huge stack of the stacker Brickworld modules, and we decided that it would work well for this the drop that we've been doing lately with these lowered tables. At this point, the balls comes flying down there, and you'll notice that there's a ramp on the bottom and on the top. And what we've learned with these ramps is they're really cool for handling balls, but if you many of them up, the balls go so fast they go flying out. So the solution is to have a ramp upside down on the top. So you basically have a tube. So it would be like a water park tube. It would be a lot of fun to go down that too. And once we're at the bottom of that,
Now we are down at the lower level here.
yes, we're at the lower level, and looking ahead, it looks like there might be some issues. But so here we first run into a Brickworld workshop module, which dumps into a Archimedes screw, and this was built by Bill Anjo, known as Mr. Red. He basically did a copy of my design, and this has been working fairly well. And he didn't copy it exactly, so it doesn't always pick up the balls. And we've talked about it. He knows what he needs to do to kind of fix it. And you can see that, like, if you put one in there, it gets doesn't go anywhere. But if you put 2 or 3 in there, they go. And so from there, they get scooped up, twisted up that, and then go down a ramp into a workshop module from last year. And this is another one that's a different color scheme. And after that one, we go on to another module that needs to be skipped quickly because it doesn't exist yet. There's an awful lot of those, isn't there?
There are somehow. It's amazing how this keeps running with all those that don't exist.
And then after that, we go to a Brickworld module, and then into my flipper, which has had a little bit of a tune-up recently. I had to replace some cracked parts. This module does have a habit every once in a while of catching a ball and building up pressure and then sending it flying. So that might have a tendency to break parts. I don't know. Twist axles. Yeah, I replaced a bunch of parts, and I also want to note on this module, this was pointed out to me by Brian in his video that I did not match the Brickworld color scheme. Well, I changed it. So it's
yes,
now,
upgrade.
yes, upgrade, yes, yeah. So from there we go into Brian's brick-built conveyor, which runs off Technic built conveyor on rubber wheels, and so the balls come up that, and then go down a zigzag output to use up that energy. From there, we go into a slow stepper module that takes 4 balls at a time up steps to move on to the next module. From there, we go into the spinning wheel type of module, which grabs the balls and brings them up, kind of spins them up and drops them out a hole at the top. So anything that can bring the balls up so that gravity can take them down to the next place can be turned into a module. So, after that, we go into a Brickworld workshop module from a prior year, and then another example of something we can skip right over. And then we go into these are a modification of the Brickworld module from a couple years ago, where 4 of them were put in a row rather than in a circular spiral as the design was originally intended. This is Mr. Red's interpretation of how to use these. So he's got 4 of them in a row with an output ramp that feeds into another example of the Archimedes screw, using the same technique that I stumbled across to create mine. This one's, again, also been working well, but does have an issue with 1 or 2 balls, but picks up batches of them. So its output then leads to 2 small stepper modules, and these are used, they end up getting used as filler when we have modules that need to be replaced or pulled off the table. It's great to have a series of small ones like that to be able to fit in spaces that are predetermined. And those are feeding into Mr. Red's ascender, which has been giving us some trouble. We had some issues early on, but I think it at least for the moment seems to be working pretty well. The fact that the balls are going up it and Mr. Red's not sitting right in front of it directly is the sign that progress has been made. And then from there, that dumps back into where we started. So that is the complete loop. 83 modules, if you have been counting. I have not. I counted several hours ago. The count may have changed. So this has been an interesting day. Everything's been, I would say overall, things have been working better than average. I think part of that is due to the fact that we had a small group in last night, which we turned everything on and got a lot of the bugs worked out. Ended out taking out some modules that just weren't up to par and putting in ones that were, a little more reliable to end up with what we got now. So I think the crowd has really been pleased with this, and I would have to say even Steve likes this GBC setup because he seems to have spent a fair amount of time hanging out around it. So
We enjoy Steve. We enjoy Steve coming over and giving him a good time. He's one of the originators of this, so we thought we'd participate with Tom and us and everybody else just to have a good time. So
There you go.
Someday you might actually catch him accidentally on camera. I don't know. I mean, he's tricky that way. He's like, he has this sixth sense about where the camera is. See?
He's so good at evading us. We'll catch him one day, though.
Yes, you will. It'll have to be like a button cam or something like that. Or
he's one of these mystical beasts that, avoid the camera and stuff like that.
That is definitely true.
Well, thank you, Tom, for taking us through this again. So here's a question. We've obviously done several of these videos with you over the years, and you talk about every time how hard it is to keep all of these running and how they're always breaking down. So what is it that kind of draws you personally to this, to keep coming back every year, even though it's also a lot of work to keep all these working?
Well, the primary thing is the amazement I see from the kids and the adults that come and see this. And it's, in the kids, it's like, wow, that's Lego. And the adults generally look at it and go, that can't be all Lego. And it is. It's all Lego. And that's something I pride myself in saying, is that this is all built out of parts that you either have at home or you can get somewhere. And I do this because I know that some kids will see this and get inspired by this and grow up to be engineers. And I did not have this kind of Lego as a kid. I mean, as a kid, I got some Samsonite gears, but it was very limited as to what you could do with them. The fact that Technic and the Mindstorms and all the other system stuff that have been added makes this possible in infinite ways. And it's just an awesome thing to be able to share this with the kids and adults. To see that, yes, you can do things like this with Lego, and it still amazes me. I see GBC modules all the time that are like, wow, that's a neat idea. I wish I thought of it. And of course, I'm going to mention Akiyuki because he is a shining star of GBC builders. It's this little quiet little ripple goes through the GBC community whenever he posts a new video. Have you seen the new Akiyuki one? Oh my God, he did it again. And I think, Mako will probably see this video and he'll probably agree with me that it's the same thing. We all just admire the crap out of Mr. Akiyuki. And Mako, if you're listening to this, I know you're aware that now neither you nor I have the world record, but Brickworld Chicago, I'm kind of gunning for it. We'll see what happens.
There you go. So on that note, we'll look forward to what we can see at Brickworld Chicago. Thanks for talking with us again, Tom.
Very good. We'll see you in June.